Much for coming, writer and political activist, and also our I-24 News Middle East senior Middle East analyst, Ali Waqt. Good evening. Thank you very much. Before we start this discussion, because you have a lot of updates, we asked, we want to go to Mudar Zahran for a look at what our viewers around the world had to say about this current ceasefire and the situation between the Palestinians and the Israelis. Good evening, Nurit.
Good evening, Lucy. So you already gave an introduction to this subject. We asked our viewers today, does Hamas have the interests of the Palestinian people in mind? Of course, the complexity of this question sort of speaks for itself, so let's go straight ahead to our poll. It was very extreme today. Only 7% said Hamas does have the interests of the Palestinian street in mind. A full 92% said no. So I want to actually start with the minority today to see sort of what their arguments were. Let's start with Salim Ali, who wrote, they were elected democratically, not by the USA. They represent the people. This is, of course, a basic argument we hear. Hamas was elected, therefore Hamas represents the Palestinian people. Lo Knesso, on the other hand, says Hamas was born of a blockade and Israeli repression. These are mercenaries commanded by a people on the verge of asphyxiation. Hamas represents some claws of the animals suffocated by Israel. So, of course, a very strong response on that end. Mike answers him. They had a sort of conversation on Facebook saying, precisely this cell, as you call it, could be a paradise. It's along the sea, 35 degrees and sun year-round. You could enjoy international funds to launch tourism, etc., etc. So he points to the fact that Gaza does get a lot of aid. All that money, a lot of criticism, as you mentioned, is going to tunnels and rockets. Why is it not going to tourism? Let's take a look at some other arguments within more kind of internal Palestinian issues. Mahassin said, if they did have their interests in mind, why would Hamas fight Fatah and kill their members to gain power? Of course, in 2007, in a violent takeover, Hamas was known to, there's this famous image of throwing Fatah members off of buildings. It's an important point to raise. And let's just end with Maha, who said, Hamas proved in this war that its interests are not only about the Palestinian people, but about building an Islamic caliphate. I think as another round of Cairo talks is about to end, we'll see how Hamas deals with that, what we can see from inside the Palestinian delegations, and I'll turn it over to you guys for more.
Yes, thank you very much, Norita, for this. Latest reports are saying that the Israelis and the Hamas reached a certain agreement.
There is a breakthrough in the talks in Egypt. Both the Palestinian delegation and the Egyptian delegations are waiting the official answer from the Israeli delegation to hear whether the Israelis accept to mention the fact that there will be some lifting of the blockade as part of the agreement. We know that this is this was a semantic debate between and difference between the Palestinian delegation, especially Hamas, who insisted that the world lifting of the blockade should be mentioned in any agreement, and first position of the Egyptians and of the Israelis that wanted the agreement to be based on the calm for calm, ceasefire for ceasefire, and any political administrative arrangement was supposed to be reported for a later couple of weeks, a month after. Hamas received this semantic but very important element of mentioning the blockade in the agreement, and it can get back to its people, to the Palestinian population in Gaza that saw the Gaza Strip almost erased from earth, and saying to the people that there will be serious talks about the lifting of the blockade. The Israelis will enlarge the space of fishing for the Palestinian fishermen in Gaza. The isolated zone between Israel and the borders of Gaza will be reduced, and Palestinians will be allowed to work their lands. And of course, the opening of the crossings between Gaza and Egypt, Gaza and Israel will be discussed in the coming days and weeks.
If we're talking about this kind of situation, if we're talking about this kind of agreement that it will be reached, we can say that maybe the situation that Hamas found itself in the Gaza Strip with the people going out against Hamas and saying that Hamas is not in their benefits may be a turning point again in favor of Hamas.
Well, you obviously are mistaking Gaza for Tel Aviv or Jerusalem. The people say it's not an issue for Hamas, just like some well-known Gazan journalist was telling me 3 hours ago over the phone that basically Hamas is another North Korea. So the public polls and stuff is something you can keep to Israeli television, but not what happens in Gaza. People are definitely fed up with Hamas, but it's not a non-issue. First of all, who's negotiating in Egypt right now? Who's negotiating? It's not Hamas that's negotiating. Hamas just has its own representative who report basically and foremost to Qatar, and who also report to their masters of the Muslim Brotherhood in Jordan, who are the actual leaders of Hamas, not Khalid Mish'al and other flunkies. So is it in Qatar and Jordan's king's best interest to have a truce? Is it in their best interest to have a ceasefire? It definitely is not in their best interest, and this could take a few of your episodes of your show to explain why. But again, Hamas is under incredible pressure. Reports I got from Gaza through well-informed sources, and I can be held responsible for saying that, quote unquote, say that they have lost at least half of their tunnels. So without the tunnels, with this Israeli magnitude of pressure, they are basically cracking, but they are being told by their masters to let go. And look, if you see the demands they put forward, the demands are basically not realistic. Is Mash'al serious when he said that let them disarm Israel, so we would be disarmed? So basically, it's like they're not interested in ceasefire. The issue of what happens to Gazans is a non-issue, and it's basically, it seems that only Israel and Egypt basically care for what happens to Gazans. It's not a non-issue for Hamas. Even if we achieve quiet for some time, I'm not optimistic. This war is not going to go away easily.
If we want right now to compare the situation between Fatah and Hamas, and to see the situation in the West Bank and in the Gaza Strip, what is happening right now? Who will control, if Israel will reach some kind of an agreement with Hamas, who will control the Gaza Strip? Will it be Fatah? Will it be Hamas? Will we see Mohammed Dahlan coming back to Gaza and maybe bringing back his pride with him? Will we see maybe Mahmoud Barghouti coming back and maybe being an option on the table for Fatah? What is happening behind the scenes?
Lucy, I learned in my career never to bet against not only Hamas but against the Palestinian tendencies in the Palestinian street. I want to remind everybody that the polls that were made in the Palestinian Authority at the eve of the elections, and even a couple of minutes before the closing of the elections day in 2006, gave Mahmoud Abbas and Fatah a huge advantage over Hamas. But the results proved that Hamas was so tied and linked to the masses in the streets. Hamas are enjoying the fact that the Palestinian Authority still is seemed and accused of corruption, of something that create antagonism between the average men and average people in the street. But the fact that Hamas in the last 8 years went into an experience of ruling party made that big portions of the of the Gazan population understood that Hamas is not the solution. Maybe the slogans that Hamas raised as an opposition party, as a resistant party, are attractive, are interesting, but between the slogans when you are in the opposition and between the fact that you need to fulfill the people's needs on the daily basis, there is a huge differences. Nevertheless, the situation in the West Bank is still different. Hamas is there still the opposition. Hamas there is the part who is criticizing the authority, the Palestinian Authority, for its corruption, for its nepotism, for the fact that huge amounts of funds were invested, but the people on the street don't see any change in their daily life. So I don't know what are the equilibrium of power right now between Fatah and Hamas. What I can say from what I heard in Gaza Strip, Hamas power, Hamas strength in the Gaza Strip will be getting down. I'm not sure what will be the situation in the West Bank. There is one stable element, is that the Palestinian will always vote for the party that Israel are hostile with. And Israel has an interest to maintain Hamas in order to keep these differences between both Fatah and Hamas, and also to tell the international community, we cannot deal with a divided nation, we cannot deal with a divided authority, we cannot deal with a divided people.
But you know, this divided nation, though, was a divided nation when they wanted to do a unity technocrat government. Israel was not willing to sit down with the United so-called
this is why Israel
Quad.
preferred to maintain this division between Hamas and between Fatah. And by the way, you talked about alternatives. The Egyptians want to see an alternative, but the Palestinian Authority is the alternative, but not the current leadership of the Palestinian Authority. The Egyptians dream of Mohammed Dahlan, at least for the Gaza Strip. The Egyptians want to see Mohammed Dahlan once again stand against Hamas, this time well-armed, this time well-supported by the Palestinian people, especially supported by the last experience of the 30 and some
much
days.
he wants to go back to the Gaza Strip.
We can't keep chasing our tails with details. I mean, we have to set the record straight about this. I am in the West Bank. I've been, as a Palestinian, I've been in the West Bank since this whole operation started, and I've been traveling to different cities of the West Bank. I've been joining the standing and as a bystander, of course, when the Palestinians are throwing rocks at the IDF. I've seen it all, heard it all, inhaled more tear gas than water in the last 4 weeks. To make a long story short, Hamas today in the West Bank is so popular that if any elections were to be held, Hamas would win possibly at 110%. This is no question about that. The West Bankers see Hamas as the savior, the Mujahideen who destroyed Israel, who put Israelis back into the shelters. This is how. But I can authoritatively confirm the peoples of Gaza. I've been speaking to everyone. I've even spoke to a former Hamas member. All of them seem against Hamas. And I spoke yesterday to the son of Ismail Haniyeh, Mu'adh Haniyeh, who is a Hamas leader and a Hamas fighter. And even him, he was very defensive. He's trying, no, we're still popular. Since when Hamas would try to convince you that they are popular? People in Gaza have had enough, and not because of the bombings, not because of what Hamas managed to do to them in the last 8 years, throwing people out of the windows, extortion, sexually harassing women if necessary. They've seen the true face of Hamas. Now, this is opening a window which very few of us, I think this operation is about the best thing that has happened to me personally and my cause. Now it's opening the window for something no one ever has spoken about, and now it's opening. Guess what? For the first time, there are people in Israel and elsewhere are looking across the borders. The fact that we already have a sovereign Palestinian state in Jordan, only that the king is not Palestinian. And that's, some of you might dismiss it, oh, crazy, stupid ideas. But trust me, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, I don't know. This is an option that this very war is bringing about. Because right now, who's Israel? Let's say Israel became dovish. Who is it going to negotiate with?
I'm trying to go with what you're saying. How do you explain the fact that, because if in the West Bank Hamas is getting stronger, how do you explain that in the West Bank we didn't see a lot of demonstration and riots during this current operation? Because it seems that if they were that strong, they could have go out on the streets and show their...
They don't have the power. Abu Mazen and the Al-Amn al-Wiqa'i, the Protective Security Bureau, they have a very tight grip. They can control anybody who speaks for Hamas. They are able to arrest him. And I would say, good job, Abu Mazen, keep up the good work. That's what I'm saying. But if it was a vote over Facebook, all West Bankers will vote for Hamas. If it was elections held today, they would vote for Hamas. But thank God that Abu Mazen have done incredible work. I am, as an eyewitness, I could confirm. I've seen them at least 10 times. The Palestinian police was trying to push the protesters away from the IDF and actually block the road with them. Abu Mazen, honestly, with all my reservations against the man, he stopped the third intifada.
Yeah, Lucy, what we're seeing in Egypt is a political battle that aimed to avoid Hamas from having any political achievement, and in order not to translate some of its military achievement, and whether we like it or we don't like it, Hamas had, in comparison to other Arab experiences in fighting against Israel, Hamas have some important achievement, especially achievements that in the Palestinian street and in the Arab street all around the Arab world.
Allow me, sorry, Ali, I'm very sorry to interrupt you. Of course, course, they had wonderful achievements because they used a weapon which no other Arab army has used, which is putting the civilians between them and the Israelis. That's a mega weapon of destruction which nobody else has used. And I'm going to let you finish. But today, and I'm going to publish this, I received the confirmation how Hamas terrorists, and I'm Palestinian calling them terrorists. I'm not pro-Israel. I'm against Hamas. Okay, Hamas terrorists locked people inside their homes in Shuja'iyya and not allowed them to get out while they get bombed.